Good morning, everyone, and welcome. It is the Full Press NFL Sunday show. It is Christmas Eve. Merry Christmas to all those who celebrate. And of course, I hope everyone's having a great holiday season as we're getting down to the final 3 weeks of the NFL regular season. We already have a handful of handful of games in the books, as we had a couple go yesterday. We have quite a few today, and then, of course, more tomorrow. So it's quite a Christmas weekend, holiday weekend extravaganza for the NFL, who I'm sure was thrilled to find that their weekend landed on the holiday weekend this year. But some big time games this week. Obviously, plenty of playoff and division clinching scenarios, and of course, we got a potential Super Bowl preview. Between the Ravens and the 49ers. And I say that only because, of course, they're both the two teams that are firmly in first place right now in their respective conference. And I picked them both to go to the Super Bowl before the season. So if I'm going to get anything right this season, I hope it's that. And I hope it's, that's something I can hold on to. So anyways, happy holiday weekend there, Braden.
Yeah, happy holiday weekend to you as well. It's a great weekend of football, like you mentioned. You got possible Super Bowl preview on Monday night. Obviously, Dolphins and Cowboys, two historic franchises going at it today. Some people calling that the Cupcake Bowl. I saw on social media. So,
I like
going to be
that.
interesting to see who takes the reins there. But yeah, a lot of good games this weekend. Over Thursday and Saturday, I was kind of shocked by a couple of results, but always good to have those entertaining matchups that you're not expecting, like last night with Buffalo and Los Angeles. So gonna be interesting to see if we get some more of those upsets today, because this time of year, as we know, anything can happen on any given Sunday.
Yeah, and going back, I like that, the Cupcake Bowl. And look, I mean, let's be honest. I mean, one in 12 or 13 against teams with winning records, the two teams combined. That's not. I mean, I'm not going to put everything on it and say they're both frauds, but there is something to be said about, okay, we need to see at this point in the season. You would hope at least one of those two teams had a significant success against teams with a winning record. Neither have, so it'll be interesting to see how this one plays out. Obviously, we'll give our picks later, but no, Buffalo. You mentioned Buffalo, and down early, and you're thinking, okay, Buffalo, their sales are kind of deflating a bit. They've had such a really nice run against some really good teams, and I mean that's the thing that's really got people's attention when it comes to Buffalo, because they're like, okay, well, it's not that they're just starting to win some games again; they're beating good teams, unlike the Cowboys and Dolphins. So when they fell behind last night, you're thinking, okay, all right, it's finally their run is run out. They're going to lose this game, and it's going to be very difficult for them to make the playoffs, or at least they're really going to need some help, and obviously to win the final 2 weeks. They come back. Josh Allen, another big game. He continues to lead the league in total touchdowns. I don't I don't imagine anyone's going to surpass him this week, because I think he has a lead of about 6 or 7 on the next closest person, which is something that's kind of flown under the radar, especially because, well, Buffalo was kind of hovering around 500 for a bit. So I was impressed by Buffalo. I'm still hesitant to kind of put that all that hope behind them going into the playoffs, but this could be one of those classic scenarios where a team gets hot at the right time. And right now, Buffalo, you hope maybe it didn't happen a little bit too early, because there's still, 2 more weeks after this in the regular season. But it it's hard to pick against Buffalo right now, especially in the AFC, because again, they keep winning teams and they're beating good teams.
Yeah, and I think if you look at the AFC too, I mean, Baltimore, believe it or not, I mean, obviously Lamar's been hurt the last couple of years, but I think only one playoff win with Harbaugh over like the last 9 seasons. We know Miami hasn't really had a lot of experience in that department, for a while. And then of course Kansas City, it's a team that is going to have to play complementary football right now. I think only scored 20 points at least in 8 of their 14 games, so a little over 50%. So we kind of always talk about how offense wins championships nowadays. With Buffalo, they're starting to get these defensive games where it's obviously not pretty, but everyone knows you're going to give up some yards, and right now they're making the stops when they need to limit the points. Obviously, last night forcing the Chargers to settle for some field goals, and I think like you kind of mentioned with Josh Allen, it's just the leading the league in total touchdowns. I think right now, just him going out there and kind of doing it with any means possible. We know in the past there's some ugly turnovers he has, but when he can get rolling with his legs and utilize that part of his game as well, it opens up so much. James Cook has gotten going. Obviously, last night had a fumble, so it got a little worrisome there for Bills fans. But I think the way they're playing, it's just kind of you look at the AFC. I don't think there's anyone that's really necessarily head and shoulders above them as long as they take care of the football. I think there's going to be a lot of really good offenses, but how much of these offenses are going to travel into the playoffs? There's very few that I have much trust in right now.
Yeah, I mean that's really the key right there is turnovers. If Buffalo limits the turnovers, and you're looking at the guy that's driving this resurgence, Josh Allen, as the main culprit because that it's generally they're in more crucial situations. So if they can limit the turnovers, all of a sudden you're looking at that Buffalo offense, and I don't think there is a offense in the league that relies more on one individual than Buffalo does on Josh Allen because he runs, he throws, and it's not necessarily a good thing. Um, Josh Allen is certainly capable of carrying a large amount of that load. I mean, I'm not trying to knock him. I'm not trying to say it's a negative, but this is kind of the situation that Buffalo's in, though, and this is why it's so precarious because they are literally living and dying with Josh Allen, and one or two mistakes on his behalf, which yeah, they're mistakes, but you put as much as they have on his shoulders, and again, it's literally on his shoulders, on his legs, on his back, all those cliches. Uh, he's bound to make a mistake here and there. Certainly for a guy who has had that problem in the past. So I'm not necessarily absolving him of it, but I'm also not placing all the blame on it because Buffalo literally asks him or needs him to do everything on that offense, and if he stays healthy and he doesn't turn the ball over, they're going to be a tough out against any team in the AFC right now because kind of like what you said earlier, it's the league is kind of I don't want to say down, just offenses haven't been as potent. Maybe that is a collective. We have 14 backups quarterbacks playing last week or something like that. Maybe more this week. So there is a bit of a I don't know downplay in quarterback play. I mean, you still have some elite guys, but for the most part, the good to mediocre to bad quarterback play is just it's all kind of just poor, and I think you're seeing that across the league where very rarely do you see a quarterback performance that's actually worthy of praising. But the reality is Josh Allen is a guy who can run, he can throw. If he stays healthy, that's great for Buffalo. But most importantly, limit the turnovers. And, if you're going to ask me to pick between Buffalo and Baltimore, I'd probably pick Buffalo. And we might have lost Braden. Oh, yeah, there he is. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, I think I'd all if they take care of business like I think most people expect them to with the Patriots. I mean, I guess they already lost to New England once, so we'll see. But obviously, win next week. Miami loses one of the next two. It's going to come down to Week 18, and it's not been as dominant in Miami as it's been at home in Buffalo for the Bills against that rival. But you got to expect just with the Dolphins if they get put in that position. They've had chances the last few years, whether it's with Brian Flores or Mike McDaniel to win in December. They haven't always been able to take care of that business. So it's going to be really interesting to see what that matchup looks like if it is winner take all for the division there in Miami Week 18. It just seems like just for the schedule Miami has, unless they just play perfect defense these next 2 weeks, it seems like we're kind of heading for that direction.
Yeah, and look, I mean, if you're going to ask me to head to head right now, I'm going to go with Buffalo. I look at Miami, and again, that's a team that where there's, again, it gets overplayed a little bit. Everyone's talking about, oh, winless against teams over 500. We mentioned it already today, but it's worth noting because, well, how do you prove yourself in this league? Well, you beat the good teams in this league. I mean, they don't have a Super Bowl. They don't have the history, the recent history to say, hey, no, we're an elite team. We don't need to. There was a year, I think, one year where the Patriots, they didn't play too many teams with winning records, but I think they had a sub 500 record for a little while, and people were panicking. And it was like, no, look, this team they just came back out of a Super Bowl, and so they had history. Miami doesn't have that. They don't have the history with the quarterback. They don't have the history certainly with the defense. The coach is for now still the flavor of the month. I don't know what's going to happen with him long term. We see it pretty much every single year or couple years. These guys, become media favorites and everyone loves them, but it kind of shields some of their deficiencies. Well, what happens when some of those deficiencies start getting in the way of playoff success or division success? If Miami blows this, I mean, they've had a clear path to win this division, and they could come off the heels of potentially a loss to the Cowboys and then eventually go into the Bills. So that could be this could be a pretty tough stretch for Miami, who's been trying to prove themselves. And if they lose this week and they're going into week 18, what would they be? 10-5? No, 10 and
Let's see.
possibly
Yeah,
10
I
and
think I
5,
think
maybe
they'd
10 and
be
6.
yeah, they'd be, I guess, 10-5 going into next week against Baltimore if they lose to Dallas.
Yeah. So it's still going to need the Bills are still going to need a little bit of help for that to become a division one-off. But if Miami loses today, that all that pressure is squarely on the Dolphins, and I'm not sure if they can necessarily handle it because I don't know if their defense is good enough and their offense is their offense is like it's a lot of boom, and I think that's obviously very good in this league. But if you're gonna like, if I were to ask you, what would you rather have, a cerebral offense or a one that's just kind of a big boom or bust? And
Yeah, cerebral for sure.
yeah. So
Yeah.
do I trust the Dolphins to consistently, if they need to scale it back to say, hey, we're going to go on this, this is what great quarterbacks do. And I know I spend a lot of time. A lot of people think I'm standing outside of Patrick Mahomes' house with a pitchfork telling him he sucks, and I really don't. I mean, I look at things a little bit more realistically, in my opinion. But he's a guy again. If you need to drive the field, it's not always about how quickly can you score, how big of a play can you make. Sometimes it's about 1,000 cuts, and that's the difference between great quarterbacks and pretty good That's why I push back at the folks going against Brock Purdy, because we've seen him do a little bit of both. I mean, the sample size is small, so who knows what the long-term outlook is going to be. But we've seen him be able to do both. They have a big boom offense, but we've also seen him, slice and dice. Miami, again, I feel like is a little bit more or too much boom and a little bit too much Tyreek Hill. Like if Tyreek Hill, I understand they won last week without Tyreek Hill, but I just I don't see that death by 1,000 cuts like I do with like Kansas City. Even in a down year, you can say at any given moment they can sit there and spread the ball across to 6-7 different receivers or tight ends or running backs and kill the clock with this huge drive where it's like Miami, I think they can do that. Every team can, but I don't know if they can just flip that switch and say, hey, this is the mode that we're going into. So that's why I say it's a little bit more of a gamble. I'm not saying I don't doubt them. I just think you go out there. You're if you're going to ask me, do I trust Miami's offense on any given Sunday, or do I trust Buffalo going into say Week 18? And I'd probably say Buffalo, just because again, it's really just about whether or not Josh Allen turns the ball over. That's really
Right.
all it's about. So, yeah, it'll be an interesting finish here towards the end. Especially if it does come down to the division on Week 18. I know the NFL is certainly hoping for that. So obviously we know Kansas City can wrap up the division this week. A game against the Raiders is always nice. It's a nice game to get your offense going again and kind of get hopefully maybe some momentum going into the playoffs. the Lions can potentially
Yeah.
lock up their playoff hopes here today. Obviously, we talk about the race for the number one overall pick in New England going to Denver. Maybe that's going to be ghosts of Denver past. Where New England hasn't necessarily played well, even with Tom Brady there. Look, the NFC South. Is Tampa Bay for real? Are they really going to be a playoff team that can make some noise? They take on Jacksonville today, who I think is just they're just on their way down. I've been saying that for weeks, and another thing that I feel like I'm kind of vindicated for. But before we get to our picks, though, I did just mention Tampa Bay, and I want to get your opinion on it because there's no doubt that Baker Mayfield has played well this season, better than I expected. Kind of like we were talking with Miami's offense, very boom or bust. That's Baker Mayfield in a nutshell. You're going to have times where it's like he looks like, wow, that's right, he was a first overall pick at one point. And then there's times where he's like, okay, this is why he's bounced around. But he's landed pretty nicely in Tampa Bay. My opinion, though, is, and this is often what happens, and you're seeing, to be honest, you're seeing it in Seattle, in my opinion. I think Baker's story is a nice story. It would be foolish to give him a long-term deal because you're not going to get this again. And I can confidently say that's kind of the case with Geno Smith too. He got off to a really, really strong start in Seattle, got that contract, and he's kind of come back to earth. He's a guy. He's just a guy. I understand. Not saying he's bad. I'm not saying he's great, but he's just a guy. And I think teams far too often I don't know what it is, maybe blinded by just being in the moment, but I feel you go out and give Baker Mayfield a 3-year contract, which it's going to be some pretty decent money. It's not going to be crazy money, but it'll be decent. You're going to set yourself back. And I'm assuming if they go out and do that, and on top of, and in turn also keep Todd Bowles, I think those are two big mistakes on behalf of the Bucs, despite how positive this season has turned for them this year. So I don't know what you think about it, whether they should commit to Baker or what.
I think I would probably treat it like maybe a 1-year deal, like a 1-year kind of prove it deal. I think it kind of makes me think of the Giants, where I mean, obviously injuries were a factor with Daniel Jones, but even if he stays healthy and then we kind of see him fall back down to earth a little bit, I think with the Giants being where they're at, I kind of view the Bucks in the same way, where I would not be surprised if they maybe look to draft a quarterback, a young guy to possibly take over from Baker if he loses the job in like a competition sort of thing next year. We know how draft picks are. There's no guarantee, but I think with where the Bucks are sitting, there's an opportunity to kind of get one of these guys that in this upcoming draft class, it's been played a lot of college football, so they're going to have a lot of experience, which I think a lot of people are starting to realize matters a lot more now than it used to. Obviously, for these college guys coming in, so I think I would treat it like a 1-year deal. Even if you don't draft a quarterback, maybe get someone that you think can at least be serviceable and try to compete with Baker to kind of push him to those limits. But yeah, long term wise, I would definitely be kind of scared committing that much money to him.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I mean, I have no problem if you're a Bucks fan to bring him back next year on a 1-year deal. And I know that's probably not what he's looking for. So that's kind of where, who's going to blink first. And that's the risk that the Bucks have to take, in my opinion, which I think there's a good chance if they do that, they probably will lose him because some team will overpay him. Like I said earlier, I mean, there was 14 backups that started in the league 2 weeks ago or last week or whatever it was. So there are going to be teams out there that are willing to maybe pay him a little bit more, or give him that multi-year deal. If you're the Buccaneers, you gotta stand firm. If it means that you look elsewhere for a quarterback next year, so be it. Like I said, I don't think it was a nice story. They had a nice season, but the season wasn't good enough for me to sit there and say, yeah, Baker Mayfield, Todd Bowles, this is the group that's going to take them back to where they want to be. I don't believe that's the case. They're older. I mean, Mike Evans is still Mike Evans, but he's going to have to be re-signed. You're going to have to make some decisions on defense with some of your key players, Devin White being one of them. So, yeah, I look, I think it would be a very poor decision and one that might set them back a little bit more or get their resurgence delayed quite a bit. And look, this is a team that so far, I mean, we still, this is year one without Tom Brady. The years leading up to Tom Brady's arrival, this team was not successful. They hadn't won a playoff game since they won the Super Bowl in 2002. So there's no guarantee that the Buccaneers are going to return to any sort of greatness or playoff contention. But they would almost be guaranteeing that, I think, if they decided to commit long term to both Baker Mayfield and Todd Bowles, because I don't think either are long term solutions for this team. And quite frankly, I feel like the more they win, unfortunately, it means Todd Bowles will probably be back. And I think that would be a mistake because, again, I've seen Todd Bowles coach. I've watched him with the Jets. I mean, this is what happens. You buy into some hope, a sliver of hope. Oh, they overachieved this year. Okay, they overachieved in a bad NFC South and in a NFL season that was overall kind of poor. A lot of mediocre to bad teams. So I'm not going to put all my future into that stock of Bulls and Mayfield. So, all right, let's let's get to our picks because, like I said, we got a few games to go through today, and then of course for tomorrow, the big game being San Francisco hosting Baltimore. But we're going to start, of course, in Atlanta. And in Atlanta. I started reading this wrong. I thought maybe I had last week's sheet up. Falcons hosting the Colts. Colts still obviously right in the thick of things in the NFC South. No CJ Stroud for the Texans. In my opinion, the Jaguars aren't that good. So, hey, Indianapolis is right there. I have them winning on the road. Atlanta, look, Atlanta's Atlanta, and I'm gonna say Indy has a lot more to play for, and I'll trust their quarterback a little bit more.
Yeah, Taylor Heineke jumps in, but at this point, I think Atlanta's just lost any steam that they may have had there, kind of late November in this NFC South race. So yeah, the Colts they've been more competitive. I know they've lost some games in some weird ways, but Shane Steichen, I think the way he's kind of handled his first year, he's really done a good job of kind of utilizing all his pieces. I think they ran the ball like 17 straight plays one time last week against Pittsburgh. So he's willing to do it any sort of style, and the Colts are rolling right now. So I got to go with Indy as well.
All right, next we have Houston hosting Cleveland, and unfortunately for the Texans, they will once again be without CJ Stroud, and that puts their chances of winning, in my opinion, to about zero. It's been kind of a rough 3 weeks. You lose Tank Dell, you lose CJ Stroud. All of a sudden, that momentum that Houston was building kind of starts to fizzle. And look, I mean, at the end of the day, Joe Flacco's come in and played some pretty darn good football for Cleveland, and they have that good defense. I like Cleveland in this one.
Yeah, I like Cleveland as well. It is interesting how much different they've been on the road, especially on defense for whatever reason. Just the numbers are complete opposite. But I think, like you said, without CJ Stroud, it's just I think Houston can only do so much against a defense like this. So I got to go with the Browns.
All right, next, Green Bay heading to Carolina. Look, Green Bay's up and down season. They have moments where it's like, all right, you don't want to play Green Bay, and then you're like, well, maybe you do want to play Green Bay because look at that defense. It's pretty much non-existent. They're playing Carolina, so I don't care where the game's being played. If it's here, if it's Carolina, if it's Green Bay, if it's on the moon, doesn't matter. I'll take the Packers.
Yeah, the Packers fans are obviously going crazy with Joe Barry's status as defensive coordinator, but still the Panthers, it's been a struggle to get really above like 16 to 18 points, even on some of their better days. So I think Green Bay will find a way, but wouldn't surprise me if it's still close.
I wonder if Packers fans are willing to sacrifice this game to finally be rid of Joe Barry. I mean, if Carolina comes in and just drops a 30 burger on the Packers, you can't imagine Joe Barry making it past Christmas Day. I mean, maybe they out of the kindness of the holidays they wait till after Christmas, but I would feel like that would be this would be the nail in the coffin if that happens. So, all right, next we have Washington at the Jets. Washington, I have nothing to add, but these two teams both stink. And yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, I'll go Washington as well. Not not a lot. I guess I can really put much stock into it. It'll maybe be Ron Rivera's possibly last win as Washington head coach if Washington moves on as expected. But yeah, I just with Trevor Simeon starting, and I think just where this Jets team is at right now, I got to go with the Commanders.
Yeah, I said earlier this week, I think in hindsight, the injury to Aaron Rodgers was probably the best thing that could have happened to him this year. Because even if he was healthy, I think this would have still been a disastrous season for the Jets. They're just not good. I don't know if Robert Saleh is the guy to
Right.
lead this team. I mean, it's the Jets. I mean, they have a history of just dysfunction. And quite frankly, the guys that Aaron Rodgers lobbied for to join the Jets just have failed miserably. And some of us were like, well, yeah, that's what happens when you go out and get a 57-year-old Randall Cobb and expect him to be 2011 Randall Cobb. So they have a lot of question marks moving forward. And in my opinion, and I think we saw this very clearly, I think we both talked about this. It was very obvious that Aaron Rodgers was never coming back this season. So having that as kind of like the biggest story kind of speaks volumes to how this season went. And to me, it was just more of an attention grab from Aaron Rodgers than anything because, well, like I said, there's no way that he would have played this season no matter what. So now you have to go into a season with him 40 years old coming off an Achilles injury. And I don't think that the mood in the locker room is as rosy or happy as it was in years past. So we'll see how that kind of plays out. But anyways, Detroit at Minnesota, big battle of the NFC North. Not really, but I like Detroit in this one. Minnesota obviously has been kind of just not floundering, but kind of an afterthought after Kirk Cousins went down, and Detroit is obviously had a really strong season. So I'll take the Lions.
Yeah, interesting game here. Twice they'll meet twice in 3 weeks to end the regular season, and depending how things play out, I don't think it's going to happen this way. But they could even meet 3 times in a 4 week span if they meet in the wild card round. So a lot riding on this game. But yeah, I like the Lions as well. Their defense still. I think you want to put them, see them put two solid games together. But right now, I think Minnesota, just their recent trends, they're kind of running out of gas, and there's only so much I think they can do with the backup quarterback. So. I think Detroit takes care of business today and locks up their playoff spot.
Next, we have Jacksonville heading to Tampa Bay, and we kind of talked about these two teams, or Tampa especially, just a minute ago. I like the Buccaneers. I mean, again, they've been playing some pretty good football. They're at home, and I just don't. I'm just not a believer in the Jaguars. I'm going to keep saying it until the end of the season because I think it's going to continue to be proven correctly. But yeah, I just don't see them as a team that's going in the right direction. And I think Tampa is riding a bit of a high, and yeah, I think they take advantage of it. So give me Tampa Bay.
Yeah, I'll go with the Bucks as well. I mean, Jacksonville, even if Trevor Lawrence plays today, I think he's still maybe questionable, but cleared the protocol. But yeah, even if Lawrence was fully healthy, I think I would still take the Bucks just with this Jags kid they're on. They're shooting themselves in the foot, obviously, too many times. I mean, you look at that Sunday night game last week. The score was probably a bigger win than what it really indicated. Jacksonville probably could have had 12 points in the first half. Too many mistakes
Mhm.
offensively. So I just think when the offense is probably the best part of their team, it's struggling too much right now. I don't really think Tampa's gonna give up much today on defense, just with how they're able to play up front as well. So I like the Bucks today. They have been a little more shaky at home, but I think with Baker Mayfield kind of seeing the opportunity, like we talked about, to maybe give himself a chance next year and at least get in the playoffs this year, I think he's going to be ready to play.
All right, next we got Arizona at Chicago. I'll take the Cardinals. Justin Fields is fun to watch and has been playing some good football. And again, if you're a Patriots fan, you hope that if you got your eye on a quarterback or whatever, that Chicago decides to stay put with Justin Fields, because essentially that's your only competition ahead of for that pick, assuming you continue to lose. I mean, you don't want to screw this up now. But I like Arizona in this one, but kind of flip a coin again.
Yeah, I went with Chicago. Like you said, trying to flip a coin. I don't really think this will be a blowout win for the Bears. I think it could come down to the wire in this one. Defensively, since Montez Sweat's got there, they've played pretty well. But on that back end, I think against Kyler, what he's still been able to do at times since coming back is has I think going to make it a competitive game. So I'll go with the Bears, but I think it'll be close.
All right, next we got the big game, Dallas at Miami, the Cupcake Bowl, as you said. This was honestly, it was very difficult to pick,
Yeah.
just because again, who's better, I don't know. It's not a matter of no, I think they're better, no, they're better. No, it's like I really don't know who's better. It's kind of a head scratcher, but ultimately, I did go with the Dolphins at home. Dallas has night and day sometimes when playing on the road. And ultimately, I think the Dolphins defense the Dolphins offense can be the biggest factor at home in this humidity. Well, actually, I don't know how humid it is. It's actually quite cool up here in Tampa, but 3 or so hours away in Miami, it might be a little bit warmer. Either way, I like the Dolphins at home, but again, I really don't know which team is better here.
Yeah, I'll go with the Dolphins as well. I think the biggest kind of reason I like them in this one is I think just looking at the two offenses, Dallas obviously hasn't been worst in the league at running the football, but I just think the versatility that Miami has, I think with Mostert and Achan, I think if they're willing to run the ball and kind of mix it up like that, I think they can just put a lot more pressure on Dallas rather than Dak kind of have to be Superman, so to speak, for the Cowboys. So I think it'll come down to that running game with the Dolphins, and I think Miami will get it done today.
All right, next, Denver hosting the Patriots tonight, Christmas Eve night. I like Denver. I mean, again, the Patriots just can't score. They play, or Bailey Zappi plays well in the first half, and he's abysmal in the second half, and that's pretty much his MO. I like the Patriots defense, and again, I mean, if you're a Patriots fan, you probably don't want to see them win. I mean, that's the reality. It's not that you're rooting for them to lose or telling them to lose intentionally, but if they go in and they come out with another loss, you're like, all right, well, 2 more weeks to go, and you're pretty much in 2024 mode. But I like Denver at home here, even though they've kind of had a little rocky stretch here the last couple weeks.
Yeah, I like Denver as well. You mentioned just the inability to score. Russell Wilson for a while there, his numbers weren't too bad, but I think you really look at how this offense has played lately. It's been kind of a struggle for Wilson. I obviously not near as bad as what we saw at times last season, but we've seen Sean Payton kind of get a little bit animated recently again with him. So it's going to be interesting to see how he plays against this defense. I don't think it'll be pretty, but I just think they'll find more ways to score and come out with the win here.
All right, next, Kansas City hosting the Raiders. Obviously I'm going with Kansas City because they're the they just dominate the Raiders. It's like the Patriots and Buffalo. There's no reason to ever pick Buffalo in those matchups. Now maybe every so often they might sneak in a win here, but that should be shocking. It would be shocking if the Raiders came in like maybe a few weeks ago, right on the heels of the coaching change. You had the momentum. Everyone was playing like maybe you can sneak in a little bit of a win. And I think it's actually going to be a little bit more competitive with Aiden O'Connell than it was with Jimmy Garoppolo and this coaching staff. But at the end of the day, Kansas City is going to win this one.
Yeah, Kansas City. I mean, they've never had less than 28 points with Mahomes against the Raiders. I think they're averaging 35.5 points per game against them. So yeah, it just seems to be kind of a get right game for the offense. Kadarius Toney out, Jerick McKinnon out. So it is going to be interesting to see kind of what pieces lead the way. I believe Isaiah Pacheco will be back. So, but yeah, it should be a game. I think the Chiefs kind of continue a little bit of the scoring momentum that they found last week, and then they take care of business. But like you said, it wouldn't surprise me if Raiders at least keep it competitive for a while. But in this rivalry, I just always got to go with the Chiefs.
Yeah, it'd be foolish not to. So, Philadelphia hosting the Giants. I like Philadelphia. I mean, this is a great timing for them to play the Giants because they really need to kind of figure out what's going on with them because maybe we talk often, like a couple of years ago, about that Steelers team that started 10-0 and no one believed it. It's like that's the most fraudulent 10-0 we've ever seen, and it was so apparent. This one may have not been as apparent, but you're starting to get the feel that maybe we should have been comparing those two Pennsylvania hosted teams a little bit closer, because this Philly team looks like a shell of himself the last few weeks. They can get back on track against the Giants. I think they will. How effective and how impressive they are, I'm not going to be. I don't know, but I do think they're going to win this game. So give me Philadelphia.
Yeah, give me Philadelphia as well. It is kind of interesting to see the comments after Monday night. Just some, questions of accountability. I don't think it's obviously near as bad as some other teams. Like Pittsburgh was, before beating Cincinnati, kind of the questions there. But just hearing kind of some of the comments, it's really interesting to see, how things have gotten there with the Eagles. I don't know if they're going to be able to stop much offenses come playoff time, even in this weaker NFC. But I think if Hurts can, we talked about it earlier with Josh Allen. If he can kind of lessen the turnovers that he's had in recent weeks, I think they'll still be a tough out. And the Giants are kind of a perfect, like we said with the Chiefs, a get right game for them. So I like the Eagles here.
And look, I mean, Jalen Hurts is a nice example, or a good example of some of the things I talk about, where we are way too quick to anoint players as elite. I believe elite is also involves being consistent and having a track record, and that that's why it's hard to convince me that a quarterback in year one is elite, because you can have a great season. Can you sustain it? And right now, if you were to ask me this time last year, what's Jalen Hurts' outlook in the future, I'd be like, well, it's fantastic. I'm basing it off what we've seen so far, and what we've seen so far is nothing but positive. Flash forward a year later, there's plenty of questions. Do I consider if his season were to end today, obviously, would I consider him an elite quarterback going into next year? I don't know. Probably not. Probably not, because right now I have good stuff in column A, some bad stuff in column B, and it's pretty well balanced. So to me, that's the sign of a good quarterback. Not great, not bad. Yeah, it's just, to me, this is one of the reasons why it's just so hard for me to jump on the bandwagon and commit to someone so quickly. And we're seeing it every single year. Very rarely. I mean, again, I knock on Patrick Mahomes a lot, but a lot of that has to do. It's all relative, and when he's being compared to Tom Brady, well, guess what? It's going to get nitpicked to death. But he's clearly, proven himself consistently every single year. It doesn't mean he's going to have the same stats every single year, but right. He's proven himself every single year. Jalen Hurts hasn't done that. Trevor Lawrence hasn't done that. I mean, Josh Allen really hasn't done that. He certainly doesn't have the success to give you that benefit of the doubt. So right now, I mean, this is a bit of a crossroads a bit for Jalen Hurts, because you go into next season, say they kind of lose out here, or maybe they only win the Eagles game, they get knocked out early in the playoffs. There's going to be a lot of questions, not only for him, but I mentioned earlier about Mike McDaniel being the latest media coaching darling. Well, it wasn't too long ago that Nick Sirianni was the guy. And trust me, there's going to be a lot more negativity on him going into the offseason if this kind of crumbles here towards the end. All right, finally, last game, Monday night, San Francisco hosting Baltimore. I think it's going to be a really good game. Baltimore won the previous rematch back in, I think, 2019 or whatever. San Francisco is going to get this one. I mean, to me, they're just clearly the most balanced team in the league. I think the discourse around Brock Purdy the last couple of weeks is foolish and just it's dumb. Am I sitting here saying, again, same idea? Am I going to sit there and say he's on pace to be this elite great quarterback after this one season? No, but there's no denying that he's had a great season worthy of winning the MVP. And he's doing it not because of the players around him. They help. They do. But we saw what happened last year when he got knocked out in that NFC Championship game. They did not look the same. We've seen Trey Lance not be able to play with these players. We've seen Jimmy Garoppolo be Jimmy Garoppolo. You know what I mean? He's been okay, but certainly not a game changer. Brock Purdy's a guy that can play. I think he's going to step up again at home against Baltimore. And this, I think, is really going to seal his MVP candidacy, because national television against the top team of the other conference. Well, watch us see like a 4 touchdown, 0 interception, 350 some odd yard performance, and you're just gonna be like, okay, that's what Brock Purdy's been doing. So give him the MVP, give him whatever. I like San Francisco in this one.
Yeah, I mean, I guess first off with the Purdy stuff, I mean, everyone wants to, say system quarterback and all these things that design touches for the pass catchers that lead to so many yards after the catch. But I think compared to, average per season, I think it's like 48% on average is kind of what quarterbacks get from help after the catch. Well, I think Purdy's just below that average, and compared to like the last four MVPs, I think his yards per attempt is like second best right now. Compared to like Mahomes last year, Lamar in 2019. So he's doing things that not a lot of people are really, I think, understanding on how he's playing the game. But yeah, I think he's the MVP right now. Baltimore's still a really good team, but obviously not clicked on all cylinders. I think San Francisco, just the fact they've left no doubt in some of their games is going to be huge in this one. I like the 49ers. I think the matchup that I'm most interested in is Ravens versus 49ers D, because Niners D, they gave up 200 some rushing yards last week. They haven't necessarily been the Niners defense from a statistical standpoint, I think, that we're used to. They're still physical. They're a tough team, but I think with how Lamar plays and how this team's able to kind of rush the quarterback like they did against Jalen Hurts, kind of keep him, in the pocket and not able to really escape and make plays. I think that's going to be the most interesting matchup to me, is just how much is Lamar going to be able to do against this Niners D that has given some stuff up. But in the end, I think just Niners are the best team, like you said. They've left no doubt when the Ravens have still had some shaky games. So I think Niners will pull away and probably win this one by at least 10 points.
Yeah, and again, I mean, this could very well be a Super Bowl preview, and that wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. So, all right, that's going to do it. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and again, once again, enjoy the holidays, enjoy Christmas if you celebrate, enjoy all the football games, and hopefully we'll get a nice nightcap tonight between the Broncos and the Patriots. I know we're all thrilled to watch that one tonight. So thank you, everyone. Stay tuned. We got our Full Press Fantasy Show coming up with Kyle Senra here in just a little bit. But once again, enjoy today's games. Enjoy tomorrow. Merry Christmas, happy holidays, and all that good stuff. Take care, and we'll talk to you soon.